Hello everyone, thank you so much for clicking on this video, and for anyone who was watching my video or my podcast yesterday about hardship and suffering with Calvin, thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate it.
You always have my back.
I really enjoyed my podcast yesterday, having someone here, and I realized that having ideas with someone else it's crazy how they say you can bounce off ideas. I just felt, I don't know, it was just interesting because all my podcasts I'm always by myself, so yeah, I want to make it possible to have people here more often with me, because it's so cool to capture people's stories. Like, that's the whole purpose of my podcast. It's just to capture stories, but also get into really good discussions. But Calvin, if you're watching, thank you so much for making it out yesterday and making it possible. So today I am going to bring up some may say this is going to be a controversial topic. I watched this very long time ago. It was like a video about Carmelita, Torres. So get straight into it. But before I get into it, I just want to say again, I hope you guys all having a great day. I hope you guys woke up with momentum, and thank you so much for always being here and watching my videos.
Yeah. Shit.
So moving on. So in 1917, many people depended on media articles to inform us about who Carmelita Torres is. So she was called the auburn-haired Amazon. So very, very unfortunate name that they would call her. And she was only 17 years old. So some of you guys are like, who is she? Why was she called this? Crazy, right? So she was known for rallying angry women in an anti-American riot that was shutting down the United States-Mexican border. But there's one aspect of her tale that I really wanted to emphasize that has so much relevance that we can learn from. So let's see. So there was much going on this riot, right? It's about the persistence of this American paranoia at the border. There was so much tension. There was so much hatred against Mexicans, and we all can see what's going on today. There's all this tension that's going on. It's pretty unbelievable, but I don't want to get into too much of the political aspect because it's a very sensitive topic. I just want to give information. So this was an interesting time in 1917 at the border, because they were using this poisonous disinfection campaign, basically, where Mexicans that would enter the border would have to be fumigated with these chemicals to clean them, but these chemicals are very dangerous. And so the whole thing happened on the border between El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez, Mexico. So these borders are set with checkpoints, procedures, and lineups, and the whole 9 yards. Of course, 1917. Just imagine the tension that could have been happening during that time. So they were it was said that during those times, the early 1900s, people were able to walk in and out, with freedom and stuff. They didn't need passports or anything like that. So, but everything changed during this specific phase. So let's time travel to 1917. There is a historian and author of Ringside Seat to a Revolution. His name is David Dorado Romo. So he basically said there was a sudden frenzy that was caused by World War I. Citizens in El Paso were terrified that the Germans would strike from Ciudad Juarez. So there was this big fear saying that the enemies were going to come from this side, where there was supposedly a hole that Germany will come and attack America and whatnot. He also states that the Mexican Revolution was still going on, and the United States was about to enter World War I. So that was 1914 through 1918. So the border was very tense due to this invasion fear, while everywhere in the United States there was a new movement that was gaining momentum. So there was they described it as the eugenics movement. So basically it was founded on questionable science, which was sought to produce a population that was both genetically and ethically better. So it was this term that they used to basically clean, America, ethnically clean America. So unfortunately, this led to tighter immigration restrictions, allowing only those who were regarded as qualified to do so. So there was health officials who were tasked with removing immigrants that they believed to be unfit or disease carriers. Let me see. I don't want to read too much of it because I don't want to get off topic. So yeah, they were like responsible for, the immigrants that would come in. They would scan them for any diseases and stuff like that, supposedly. And at the same time that this was going on, there was a belief that Mexicans are inferior and unclean. So there was also this ethnic cleansing, but it was also this hatred toward Mexicans and saying that they were dirty and inferior and so on and so on. So they were saying that Mexicans were dirty, rapists, thieves. They were causing this paranoia that just kept on feeding this hatred toward Mexicans. And that's where the word greaser was used a lot to describe Mexicans. So I actually added the bullet point. They made movies such as Bronco Billy and the Greaser. This term was so strong at the Mexican border at those times, so the word greaser was used a lot. And it's just very unfortunate. So El Paso's mayor at that time, whose name was Tom Lee, had developed an obsession with cleanliness, which defined his political platform. So really interesting just to think about it. A mayor who comes in and he's like, I'm just gonna focus on the cleanliness of, which is kind of cool, being clean is important, but you can see that the way they were using it was like a propaganda, what you can say. So all of a sudden there was this obsession with not only racial purity but also physical purity, which was said by David Romo. He was supposedly going to clean up the Mexicans and get rid of the dirty ones. He called them the bad elements. So basically which pretty much means racially bad elements. So one of Mr. Lee's biggest fears was a disease called typhus, which was spread by lice. So under the pretense of sanitary betterment work, he helped lead a campaign to inspect every house in predominantly Mexican neighborhoods. So if the inspector found lice inside the homes, they were forced to take vinegar and kerosene baths. Kerosene, pretty much like gasoline. So yeah, last time I checked, it's not good or healthy or anything like that. And they also had their heads shaved and their clothing burned. Hundreds of homes were eventually destroyed to prevent this outbreak of lice and typhus. Mayor Lee also expanded the supposed health measures to include inmates in the El Paso jail. So they were doing this now in jails, David Romo said that they had to strip naked and take a bath inside kerosene. He's pretty much talking about the prisoners, who mostly were Mexican or Mexican Americans. And on one occasion, supposedly it seems somebody lit a match when, the Mexican and Mexican Americans were taking a bath in vinegar and gas, and 27 of them burned to death. So who knows, but it was on the newspapers and everything, so it really happened. And the newspapers pretty much called this the jail Holocaust. So yeah, moving on. Despite the tragic fire, Mayor Lee pushed forward with even more aggressive plans. He sent a telegram, a Western Union telegram, I guess is how they used to communicate back then, before phones and stuff, to someone named Rupert Blue, who was the Surgeon General up in Washington, D.C. So the telegram pretty much said, hundreds dirty, lousy, destitute Mexicans arriving at El Paso daily will undoubtedly bring and spread typhus unless a quarantine is placed at once. So, wow. Thankfully, the government didn't agree to a full quarantine because evidence suggested that typhus wasn't a major threat in the area. So, thank goodness. But instead, they funded a new disinfection plant at the border in 1916, which is not so good. I'm gonna skip this bullet point and skip this point. I'm sorry, I just don't want to get off topic. So basically, in this facility, at the border, every immigrant was considered a second-class citizen, and they had to strip naked. So if you were in across to America, across the border, during those times, you knew that you had to be naked, fumigated with gas, and who else knows what else. So their clothes were sent to a large steam room dryer, and then their clothes were fumigated with toxic pesticides inside the gas room. The gas room was a very toxic place for even workers to work in. So yeah, so an inspector would check each person's body, including private parts, for lice. And if they found lice, immigrants would have to shave their head and body hair, you know, what I explained earlier. And they would have to bathe in a bath of vinegar and kerosene. So, and people like also had their eyelids checked for pink eye, and many like had to complete puzzles or like simple IQ tests to prove that they were fit to enter America. So yeah, after this process, they'd receive a ticket as proof that they were disinfected. But they would pretty much have to go through this process every 8 days. Imagine, every 8 days you would have to go through this process, like this dehumanization, like this, just, yeah, it's very embarrassing. I can't imagine putting myself in their shoes. So David Romo said they did not talk about this humiliating process. They kind of like internalized it. It was like, he said, it's that psychology of shame. So yeah, it's when you break the mind of a people, like you can do whatever you want, you know. So it's really sad. So the toxic baths and dehumanizing inspections at the border set the stage for a revolt. So this is where Miss Carmelita Torres comes in. So let's see. I'm gonna skip to the really interesting part. Okay. So there was a trolley heading to the border full of women. And one of those women was a 17-year-old maid from Ciudad Juarez. And she was pretty much in the trolley, and she knew that they were going to be checked, going through like the gas bath, you know, the whole process. And she pretty much just told everybody, like, let's just say no and refuse, you know, let's take a stand. So that's when the protest started. So on that trolley, she riled up those women, and yeah, that's where the protest started. So let's see. And I also just want to add, like, there was also a lot of sexual humiliation for the women too. Like, there were like rumors that they were like often told to strip like absolutely naked just so the officers could take pictures of them and post them in bars and stuff like that. Like I said, who knows the truth? Like, I don't want to, like, it's very controversial. Like, I just don't want to say anything that may not be true, but this is what was said, and I kind of believe it. Just imagine, you know, people think they can get away with everything. So that's why she took a stand. So let's see. So they claimed her as the ringleader and as the instigator, but she was just a young woman who was just sick of the injustice and the humiliation. So what started as like 200 protesters that morning grew to a crowd of 2,000. So reporters said that the scene reminded them of bees swarming. They stopped the border and it was a lot of clashing, you know, imagine. So there was a quote, said the hands of the feminine mob would claw at the tops of the passing cars. So they were saying that they were violent and they were like scaring people, but I'm pretty sure they were just, you know, standing, protesting against what was wrong. So the newspapers are basically claiming them as like villains and stuff like that. So protesters like laid down on the tracks in front of the trolley cars to create a blockade. They were also joined by men in what was called the bath riot. So that whole protest was, I think they said they called it the bath riots. So they shut down this border for 2 days. And David Romo says, then all you hear is that the ringleaders were arrested and a few of their men were publicly executed. So as for Carmelita Torres, she was thrown into prison. And historians don't know what happened to her afterward. So they said, David Romo said, we lost every trace of her. At 17 years old, this woman at 17 years old. It's crazy. So it's very unfortunate that the fumigation did not stop after the riots. So in 1917 alone, over 100,000 Mexicans were deloused at the border. That same year, an immigration law made border procedures even more rigid. So immigrants at all points of entry needed to have a passport and take a literacy test, and many would also have to pay an $8 head tax. So $8 at that time was a lot of money. It's a lot of money. So yeah, just imagine. So later that year, the United States Public Health Service laid down the instructions for border agents about who should be kept out of the country. And this is who they said should be kept out of the country. So imbeciles, idiots, feeble-minded persons, physical defective persons afflicted with loathsome or dangerous contagious diseases. So all this was said again by David Romo, who pretty much did a lot of research on this, so he's a very reliable source. So that's why I'm using him a lot. My bullet point after was that the thing is the discrimination policies being resembled on the border was also being resembled elsewhere during that time. And so basically they were saying that during that time Nazi Germany was like copying us. They basically copied this fumigation tactic. So we pretty much use this tactic to like kill pests like lice and stuff, but supposedly Nazi Germany like used our systems and they just copied it, but to use it for their gas chambers to eliminate Jews during that time. Very unfortunate. So David Romo says it's not so much that the United States was copying Nazi Germany, it was the opposite. Germany was copying the United States. That is a bold statement being made. I just said that, like, that is a bold statement. Like, that's why I was like very controversial for me even bring this up on my topic. I mean, on my YouTube channel, like. But I told myself like all this is for like educational purposes and for wisdom, He found that in 1929, the United States started using Zyklon B, an extremely poisonous acid gas, to fumigate clothing at the border. And in 1937, in a German pest science journal, a scientist called for the use of Zyklon B. He included 2 photos of El Paso delousing chambers as an example of how effective this chemical agent was and how it was used to kill unwanted pests. So again, Germany was looking at us and utilizing our equipment, not utilizing our equipment, but pretty much copying us, but using it to kill people. It's very sad. So the same scientists pushed to use it to disinfect concentration camps, and eventually it was used to murder millions of people in concentrated doses. So this is just so sensitive because like literally our country is being compared to Nazi Germany, and that the idea that Germany was copying us, like, that's mind-boggling. And we weren't told this growing up. Like, it's just really interesting. So I just added the bullet point again. America did not intentionally use this chemical to kill Mexicans. Well, that's what the documentary and everything that I've seen. But like during these times there was a lot of chemical warfare going on, and people were doing like terrible things to each other, all in the name of like eugenics, or if that's how you say it, like eugenics, basically saying like only some people are human and some are not. So it's really crazy how our history can go downhill from such a good place. Like, I know America had so much, a lot of bad history, but a lot of good things happen here as well. But the unfortunate things is what stands out more. So it's just really sad overall. So let's see, my next bullet point was that like overall these fumigations were so bad because not only was it humiliating, but it caused so many health defects to Mexicans that like no one did even like think about, or maybe didn't even think about, who knows. But like when people were being sprayed, imagine they thought they were just being sprayed with like chemicals that weren't gonna harm them, but they were harming them, and they had to keep going through this process every 8 days. And just like imagine just being sprayed with the chemical like every time you try to go home or something. Yeah, just really unfortunate again. So my next bullet point was there was no awareness given to the people who were sprayed with these fumigations, as well as the people who were dealing with the fumigation. So like the people who were handling the poisonous gases, they weren't even like knowledgeable of the stuff that they were using. So it's just so sad that like people just go to work and they just do what they have to do, not knowing that like what they're doing is killing other people and even killing themselves. So next bullet point was there was like some parts of the documentary that I saw, there was like workers that worked at the border, like American people, you can say. Like they're watching Mexicans like being sprayed, and they were like just talking about how sad it was to see, like them just being at their desk answering phones, and they're just seeing like Mexicans with their children, just being stripped naked, and again sprayed with these gases. So yeah, like this whole podcast today, like I said, it's not to cause any hatred toward, you know, one another, or like, the reason I bring it up because it has so much relevance with today. We see so much going on with the immigration going on, and you know, in a lot of these cities that, you know, it's just a lot of clashing. So I just feel like overall, I just feel like I had to bring this up because so much history is always forgotten, and there's so much people who did amazing things, and just for them to be silenced, all because they want to use their voice. So I just want to say, like, you know, if you see something, if you just see injustice overall, just stand up, you know? Even if you feel afraid, or that you feel that everyone in the room is gonna go against you, you know? I'd rather stand up than sit down for something that has meaning, you know? So I just want to say thank you guys so much for watching this video. I'm really into like history, so my podcast is gonna be a mixture of a lot of things. So if you like this type of stuff, I hope, you know, you gonna hit a like and subscribe and all that good stuff. But yeah, thank you guys so much again, and I hope this like brought some light. I hope I did it justice, you know. But overall, we should love one another, you know, and accept each other no matter where we come from and how we look. So yeah, thank you guys again, and hope you guys have an amazing day or amazing night, and I hope to see you guys next time. Have a good one.